Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're tackling a big one, an epic journey, really. Everest Base Camp.
That's right. It's one of those bucket list destinations, isn't it? Iconic.
Totally. And what's great is our source material for this deep dive comes directly from you, the listener. We've got this incredibly detailed timeline, character list. It's all about a trek by 5 college friends back in April 2025.
Yeah, it's a fantastic resource. So our mission really is to unpack this specific adventure. We want to pull out the key moments, the challenges they face, maybe some surprising turns, and, understand what trekking EBC is really like based on their experience.
Exactly. This isn't just about mountains and views, though there's plenty of that. It's a story of planning, hitting unexpected roadblocks, personal struggles, those moments of real triumph, and even some post-trek stuff you might not expect.
Okay.
Let's get into it.
Let's do it.
So it all kicks off, like way back in July 2024. Suresh just floats the EBC ID on WhatsApp, and almost instantly, Anu and Kavi are like, yes. Then Gopi, Deepa, Tyaga join in pretty quickly. A group of 6 friends, initially.
That commitment, right off the bat, it says something about the pull of EBC, doesn't it? And they jump straight into planning, which is crucial. Sharing training ideas, gear lists.
Right.
And they made a key decision early on, booking a private trek through Trek the Himalayas. So they had a trek leader, porters. That structure is important. But it raises that question, doesn't it? How does all that careful planning stack up against the sheer unpredictability of Nepal?
Absolutely. And they did plan their training. It was pretty diverse, actually. Anu was doing weekend hikes in the Bay Area. Sometimes Tyaga joined her. He'd done Kilimanjaro, but sadly had to drop out later because of work stuff.
Shame. Kili experience is useful.
Yeah. Then Gopi, Kavi, and Suresh were hitting some serious trails in South India, Kudremukh, Noshvathi, places like that. Deepa was doing cold day hikes over in Germany. Plus, the usual running, walking, stairs, some strength training mentioned in the notes. They definitely put the effort in beforehand.
Seems like it. They weren't just hoping for the best.
But that unpredictability you mentioned, it smacked them right in the face as soon as they got to Kathmandu in April 2025. Gopi arrived a day early, did the sensible things, got a local SIM, pulled out cash, checked into the hotel.
Smart move, getting settled.
And he tackled that classic Kathmandu challenge, finding genuine gear. Apparently it's tricky. He ended up going to a proper marmot store to get Rab stuff, rucksack, jackets, gloves. Didn't want to risk getting fakes.
Good call. You don't want gear failing up there. But what's really striking in this timeline is that the first major obstacle wasn't even on the trail.
No, it was just getting to Lukla, the starting point.
Exactly. Severe smog, the notes mentioned forest fires, crop burning it, just shut down Lukla Airport, flights canceled for days.
Right. Imagine the frustration. All that planning, training,
Yeah.
and you're stuck in the city. They met their base camp manager, Nitra Magar, and their trek lead, Sangam, to figure things out.
And the options weren't great, were they?
Not really. Helicopter straight from Kathmandu, super expensive. Or this really long, 7-hour drive to a place called Ramchap, and then hope for a flight or maybe a helicopter from there.
Big gamble either way.
They went for Ramchap, left at 2 a.m. The drive sounds brutal, 6 hours, washed out roads, bumpy. Suresh even got sick from it.
Not a great start.
And they get to Ramchap thinking, okay, maybe now. But nope. Flights still totally backed up, even flights to a nearby place called Cirque, which would still mean a 6 to 8 hour road walk just to reach Lukla.
Wow. So this really drives home a key point, doesn't it? Contingency planning for these trips has to include financial flexibility. Because what did they end up doing?
They had to bite the bullet. As the queues got longer, the helicopter prices from Ramchap started climbing. Around 1 p.m., they just booked a heli, skipped the huge line, cost a lot extra, but it finally got them moving.
Adaptability. And sometimes, unexpected costs. It's part of the deal in remote travel, especially when weather's involved.
So the helicopter ride itself sounds fun. Great views, seeing that tiny Lukla airstrip appear. But interestingly, their main guide, Sangam, couldn't get on that heli, maybe space, maybe cost. The notes aren't specific. He planned to fly to Cirque and meet them later.
Splitting the team already.
Yeah. So they land in Lukla, 2,860 meters. They meet their porters, including Akash, who steps up as a temporary guide. Quick lunch, and then finally they start walking, the first leg to Phak Ding, and their introduction to the famous Nepali flat.
Which, as anyone who's trekked there knows,
Is anything but flat.
Right.
Ups and downs constantly.
Exactly. So first night, Phak Ding, which is actually lower than Lukla at 2,610 meters. Check into the hotel. Dinner sounds like standard trek fare. Dalapat, fried rice, garlic soup, ginger tea, good fuel.
Okay, day 2, they're heading towards Namche Bazaar. Morning seems okay. They pass checkpoints, get their smart IDs for the park, cross suspension bridges,
Yeah.
including that really high, famous Hillary Bridge.
Yes, the Hillary Bridge, iconic. And someone spotted the bungee jump nearby. Foreshadowing.
Huh? Yeah. But then the afternoon hits, and this is where the source material really shows how altitude starts to bite. The climb up to Namche Bazaar, it's a big jump to 3,440 meters. It's described as really difficult. Slow going, mule trains just cruising past them.
Yeah, that's humbling, isn't it? The mules just power up. It really shows how altitude becomes the great equalizer. It doesn't matter how fit you are back home, necessarily.
And when they finally reach Namche, which is like a proper town,
Yeah.
the effects are immediate for some. Diba gets hit really hard, splitting headache, shortness of breath, no appetite at all, classic AMS symptoms.
Acute mountain sickness, yeah. And her oxygen levels.
Alarmingly low. The notes say mid-60s for her SEP-BO2.
Yeah.
It's really not good. And Kabi wasn't feeling great either, had diarrhea, even saw a doctor there. Cost about $120 US, another unexpected expense. They were just wiped out.
Understandable. That first big altitude jump can be rough.
So day 5 is set aside for acclimatization in Namche, which
Yeah.
is standard practice. But Deepa's oxygen is still low, so they take her to the hospital there.
Okay, this is important. What did the hospital say?
The doctor diagnosed AMS, gave her some steroid-based medication, but was really clear. She should only continue if her oxygen levels significantly improved by the next day.
Right. That's the critical medical advice you have to follow. It shows there is support, but it requires making sensible, sometimes really tough decisions based on objective signs.
While Deepa was resting, the rest of the group did their acclimatization hike. Went up to the Tenzing Norgay Sherpa Heritage Center, climbed about 300 meters higher than Namche, the hike, high, sleep, low thing, got some views, had more garlic soup. But when they got back, Deepa's PO2 was still low, still worrying.
That's not the improvement they were hoping for.
No. They spent some time exploring Namche, did a bit of souvenir shopping, hit a bakery, and then they had this really interesting encounter that evening. They met researchers from the University of Chichester who were actually studying AMS right there.
Wow, researchers on site. That's fascinating.
Yeah. Anu, Deepa, and Gopi even volunteered to wear SpO2 trackers overnight for their study, contributing to science amidst their own drama.
That's pretty cool. But what did the researchers or maybe other guides say about Deepa's situation?
Well, this is key. The source notes that the researchers, and also another experienced Trek leader they met, strongly advised Deepa not to go higher.
Okay, so you've got the objective data, low SAMPO2, you've got the initial doctor's advice, and now you have independent experts also saying, don't push it.
Exactly. It all pointed one way. So, day 6, the decision was made. Deepa still had symptoms. Her oxygen was still only around 70. She made the tough call to turn back. Sangam, their guide, helped arrange a helicopter evacuation from Namche down to Lukla.
A very difficult decision, but absolutely the right one. And it turned out to be even more critical than they might have realized at the time, didn't it?
Yeah. Later, back in Lukla, she had an X-ray. It showed fluid buildup in her lungs, the very beginning of HAPE, high-altitude pulmonary edema.
Wow. Hey, PE, that's life-threatening.
Totally. So she took another helicopter from Lukla, straight to Kathmandu, and then flew home to Bangalore. It just shows how quickly AMS can escalate, and how crucial it was that she listened to her body and the advice she got. That decision likely prevented a much more serious outcome.
Absolutely. A powerful reminder about the risks. So the group is now 4.
Yep. Anu, Suresh, Kavi, and Gopi press on towards Tengboche. The trek sounds like it was medium difficulty. Saw rhododendrons blooming, which must have been beautiful.
Oh, the rhodos in spring. Yeah.
They had a funny moment, apparently got chased by an angry cow. Gopi and Anu had to duck into someone's tiny house to escape.
Uh-huh. You get all sorts on the trail.
They also met this really inspiring 75-year-old woman, Mira, attempting the trek. Passed monasteries, crossed more bridges, got views of the big peaks and the Dudkoshi River way below.
Sounds like a classic EBC trek day.
They reached Tengboche at 3,867 meters. Missed visiting the famous monastery there, maybe they were too tired. Checked into the tea house. Notes mentioned a cozy dining area with a furnace, but the bedrooms were cold. And this was, importantly, the last stop where they had free electricity and any kind of cell signal.
Right, the comforts start dropping off quickly now.
First thing they did, called Deepa to make sure she was okay.
Good friends. Okay, moving higher.
Day 7, trekking to Tengboche. Anu mentions in the notes she felt her legs getting stronger, like she was developing proper trekker's legs and finding her rhythm. And they noticed the environment changing significantly.
How so?
Vegetation getting much thinner, more sparse. A very clear visual cue that they were gaining serious altitude, less oxygen available.
Yeah, the landscape tells the story, doesn't it? It's part of that climatization process, just observing those changes around you.
They reached Dingboche, check into the Hotel Bright Star. Gopi apparently had a moment of pure joy finding warm running water there, a real luxury at 4,410 meters. And they experienced their first snowfall that evening.
Proper Himalayan weather.
Evening sounds quite cozy, actually.
Yep.
Playing card games, Anu kept making Suresh lose, apparently. Anu had a cold, used some local Sancho oil, which seemed to help, and they found comfort food. Ordered plain white rice and mixed it with their own puliodare mix they'd carried all the way from Chennai.
That's brilliant. A little taste of home can make such a difference up there. Smart packing.
Day 8 was their second acclimatization day, this time in Dingboche. It snowed lightly again. Anu apparently considered taking a mule for the acclimatization hike, but knew she needed to walk. But the weather wasn't great. Snowy, windy.
Right. Conditions can change fast.
So instead of the planned 600-meter climb up towards Nain Peak, they only managed about 300 meters before turning back. Gopi wanted to push on a bit further, but Sangam called him back via Akash.
And that highlights that classic tension, doesn't it? The trekker's ambition versus the guide's responsibility for safety in iffy conditions. Gopi was apparently a bit unhappy about cutting it short.
Yeah, sounds like it. But the views they did get of Ahmedabad were apparently stunning and crystal clear, so it wasn't wasted effort.
A good reward. And a practical note here from the source. From Dingboche onwards, charging phones and devices wasn't free anymore. Cost about 500 Nepali rupees.
Right, those little costs start adding up. Okay, day 9 onward to Lobuche. Early start. Gradual climb initially, amazing views, constantly layering up, then taking layers off as they warmed up with the effort. They dropped down to a place called Thukla for lunch.
Thukla, yeah, that's the spot before the big pass.
Exactly. After lunch, they tackled the Thukla Pass itself at 4,830 meters, described as very windy. Gopi took a slightly harder, steeper path, trying to avoid the main crowd of trekkers.
Finding his own way.
And just after the pass, they reached the memorial point, that very sobering place with all the cairns and plaques dedicated to climbers who've died on Everest and other peaks.
A powerful, reflective spot puts the whole endeavor into perspective.
Definitely. It snowed again briefly there. The rest of the trek to Lobuche was mostly that Nepali flat, undulating terrain.
So, Lobuche, often called the oxygen altitude home, but really it's where things get noticeably tougher. Colder, breathing takes more effort. What were the conditions like there?
Pretty basic, according to the notes. Shared bathrooms were the norm because attached ones apparently just freeze solid at that altitude. They were relying on body wipes, but even that became difficult because the rooms were freezing. They hadn't had a proper shower since the trek began, about 9 days now.
Yeah, the glamour fades quickly at 4,940 meters. Basic survival and warmth become the priority.
Right. And then, day 10, EBC Summit Day.
The big one, early start.
Oh, yeah. Wake-up call at 3 a.m. Anu apparently had a terrible night's sleep, even managed to bend her glasses somehow in the dark.
Yeah.
Using the shared bathrooms was functional, clean enough, but the water was frozen. Quick breakfast, then out into the pre-dawn cold for the trek to Gorakshep.
Gorakshep, the last settlement before base camp itself. How was that leg?
Brutally cold, hands freezing despite gloves, but the views were solid. Interestingly, Suresh, who was usually quite strong, was struggling to keep pace, maybe lack of sleep. Meanwhile, Anu, who often described herself as the slowest, was maintaining her pace well.
It just shows, doesn't it? Altitude hits everyone differently, day by day even. It's not always predictable who will feel strong when.
Totally. The trail to Gorakshep runs alongside the massive Khumbu Glacier. Rocky terrain, awesome mountain views. Gopi thought they actually crossed part of the glacier itself.
You get very close to it there. Feels immense.
They reached Gorakshep around 10 a.m. after about 4 hours. Huge relief just to arrive. Dumped their main packs, quick change, and then headed straight out again for base camp itself.
No rest. Straight into the final push.
Exactly. It's about a 3-kilometer trek from Gorakshep to EBC. A solid ascent, still biting cold. The initial excitement apparently started to wear off after about 2 hours as the rocky path just seemed to go on forever. Anu felt she was at the end of her tether.
I can imagine. That final stretch can feel relentless when you're tired, and the goal is right there, but still feels far away.
But her friends encouraged her, kept her going. And then, that moment, seeing the actual Everest Base Camp marker rock in the distance.
The payoff. Must have been incredible joy, relief.
Yeah. The scene itself was, well, that may be a bit chaotic. Graffiti on the famous rock.
Yeah.
Visibility wasn't great that day. There was even a helicopter rescue happening nearby. They found a small line of people waiting for photos at the rock, quickly took their shots before the queue got bigger. Gopi presented his 3D printed key tags. He'd made a little memento.
Nice touch. But there's a reality check there, too, isn't there?
Yes. Ordinary trekkers don't actually go into the expedition camps beyond that entrance rock marker. You see it from a slight distance.
Right. It's not like you're mingling with the Everest summit teams.
No. And the weather turned really fast. Started snowing heavily. Their guide, Sangam, had to hustle them back towards Gorakshep pretty quickly. Anu wished they'd had more time just to soak it in.
Understandable after all that effort. But mountain weather dictates everything.
The return trek to Gorakshep was long, back over that rocky terrain, but the source says their motivation was high. They'd done it, reached the goal.
Achievement unlocked. What about that night? Any stargazing?
They tried, but it was just too cold. Minus 10 degrees Celsius. They couldn't stay outside for long.
Brr. Okay, so summit done. Now the long walk back down.
Day 11, starting the descent towards Farish, they passed back through La Bouche, had lunch again at Thukla. As they descended, the views changed, opened up. Spectacular vistas, including the Peak Chalatsi and the whole Farish Valley spreading out below them. The last few kilometers into Farish were surprisingly flat.
The descent is often faster, breathing gets easier, but it's still hard on the knees, isn't it? And you see things from a different perspective. And there's a little celebration.
Yet Gopi apparently stopped at a tea house popular with porters and had a beer to mark the first proper day of descent. He even bought beers for Akash and Tej, part of their porter team.
Nice gesture. That camaraderie builds on the trail.
They stayed at the Himalayan Hotel in Frisch, which the notes describe as one of the nicest, cleanest places they stayed, with amazing food parathas, egg curry. And it wasn't crowded. It snowed a bit again that evening.
Sounds like a welcome bit of comfort.
Day 12, the group dynamic changes again. Anu and Suresh decided to take a helicopter out from Farish. Anu had apparently planned this as an option, and Suresh decided to join her.
Okay, so flying out from midway down, that's an option some people take.
Leaving Kabi and Gopi to trek the long way back down to Namche together.
Just the two of them now, with the guide and porters, presumably. How is their trek?
Started with light snow. Still had some uphill sections, even though it was mostly descent. Kavi was apparently now a total pro, just taking everything in stride. They had lunch at Tashinga, felt pretty wiped out afterwards. Then rain mixed with snow hit them in the late afternoon. Finally made it back to the Hotel Green Tara in Namche.
Back in Namche. Must have felt like a metropolis after the higher villages. And the first thing they wanted.
A shower. After 9 days without one, they happily paid the 500 NPR for a hot shower.
Oh, I bet that felt amazing. Simple luxuries, right?
Absolutely. That evening, after dinner, Sangam and Ashok took them to the Hungry Yak Bar. It was Nepali New Year and also Tamil New Year, so they celebrated. Had some drinks, enjoyed live music.
Nice way to mark the occasion and unwind a bit.
Day 13 wasn't about unwinding, though. Kavi and Gopi were up early and heading back towards the Hillary Bridge for the bungee jump.
Whoa. After all that trekking, they still had energy for bungee jumping.
Apparently so. They were the first jumpers of the day, so no waiting. It was Gopi's third jump ever, Kavi's first. Both just went for it. The notes say the jump itself wasn't super high, but the location, jumping over that gorge near the suspension bridge. Incredible surroundings.
That takes some nerve. But what about the trek after the bungee?
That was tough going. The trail was apparently quite unpleasant because of all the mule and Zapkio dung made worse by the rain. The smell made breathing difficult.
Ugh. Yeah, trail hygiene, or lack thereof, can be a real factor.
They stopped at a German bakery, Hermann Helmer's Bakery, just before Pakding for lunch. Indulged in pastries and mushroom pizza. It rained pretty much all afternoon. They finally dragged themselves into Lukla in the evening, too exhausted to really celebrate being back at the start 10 point.
Completely understandable. Long day, big adrenaline swings.
Day 14, getting back to civilization.
Tribunal.
Almost. Gopi and Kavi went to Lukla Airport for their early flight. Delayed, of course, by over an hour.
Standard Lukla experience, it seems.
The flight was on a small plane, landed in Ramchap again. Takeoff wasn't quite the thrill they expected.
And the journey back to Kathmandu? Smooth sailing.
Not exactly. Instead of the private taxi they might have hoped for, Sangam put them in a crowded local van for the bumpy ride back. Gopi got stuck with the last, probably worst seat.
Oh dear. More rough roads.
They finally got back to Kathmandu in the evening. Showered, cleaned up. met with Nutra Magar, the trek manager who gave them their completion certificates and those nice ceremonial Buddhist shawls, patas.
Oh, that's a lovely touch. A formal recognition of their achievement.
That night was Kavi and Gopi's last evening together in Nepal. They did a bit of a pub crawl, had dinner at a Korean barbecue place, then back to the hotel as Kavi had an early flight home the next day.
End of the shared adventure.
Right. Day 15, Kavi leaves. Gopi's now solo in Kathmandu. He thinks about renting a motorbike and riding to Pokhara, but decides against it. Roads too bad, rainy weather. Smart choice, probably.
Yeah, Nepali roads on a bike can be dicey.
So instead, he rents a scooter, had to leave his passport as collateral, and rides up the Chandragiri Hills, just outside the city.
Okay, so still looking for things to do, shifting gears from trekking to more local sightseeing.
Exactly. He took the cable car up. Apparently, it was quite lively up there, adventure activities, something called sky cycling. But the weather was still overcast, so no distant Everest view, unfortunately.
Ah, shame. But still a different kind of view.
He had lunch, rode back down. Then he visited the Narayanahiti Palace Museum, the former royal palace. Found it really well preserved, thoughtfully done. That evening, more bar exploration. Purple Haze, H20. Tried a Gothic bar, which sounds like it was a bit of a dud.
Exploring the city vibe.
Day 16, still solo. A local guy named Roshan took him to a workshop where they make kukris, those famous Gurkha knives.
Oh, cool. A traditional craft experience.
Yeah. Gopi paid extra to get a custom 10-inch one made. Watched the blacksmith, Indra, and his nephew Prashanth forge it in their shed, hammering away at an old truck leaf spring. Gopi apparently didn't do much hammering himself.
Probably wise, but watching the process must have been fascinating, and they showed him how sharp it was.
Oh, yeah. The source vividly describes the blacksmith shaving hair off Gopi's own calf with the finished blade to demonstrate its sharpness.
Wow, that's confidence in your work.
After the workshop, Gopi visited Single Tree Hill for another view over the Kathmandu Valley, walked on a glass skywalk bridge there. Back in the city center, he saw Hanumandok Square, near the old palace, admiring the temples and intricate wooden windows. The palace museum itself was closed, though. Returned the scooter.
Packed day. And the evening.
Tried another pub crawl attempt, but hit a snag at a reggae bar. Apparently no reggae music playing, they wouldn't take credit cards, and offered a terrible exchange rate for Indian rupees. He had to use up most of his remaining cash just to pay and leave. Ended up just going back to the hotel, tired out.
Sometimes the simple things go wrong, don't they?
Happens all the time with travel. Okay, day 17, departure day for Gopi. Did some last-minute souvenir shopping in the morning, checked out, got a cab to the airport for his 5:30 p.m. flight.
The final leg. Surely straightforward from here.
You'd think, but no. His flight out of Kathmandu was delayed, significantly, which meant his connection in Delhi was going to be incredibly tight.
Oh no, international connections are stressful enough.
And Delhi was his port of entry back into India, so he had to go through immigration, collect his checked baggage, go through customs, recheck his bag. The whole 9 yards. He literally had to run through Delhi airport.
Nightmare scenario. Did he make it?
He got to the gate for his Bangalore flight, breathless, only to find out that flight was also delayed.
Oh, for goodness sake. Travel gods were not smiling.
Finally lands back in Bangalore, late. And the final hurdle. Couldn't get an Uber or Ola cab easily. High demand, maybe some strike issue mentioned. He ended up having to take a BMTC city bus part of the way, then walk the rest of the way home in the dark.
And the final indignity.
His suitcase. Walking on rough pavement, the protective cover got damaged and the wheels broke. Just a fittingly bumpy end to the whole adventure, right down to the last step.
Wow, what a saga from start to finish.
It really is incredible, isn't it, when you lay it all out like that from the source material. The planning, the smog delays, the physical grind, Deepa's really serious situation and tough decision, the sheer effort to get to EBC, the quick turnaround, the split group, the bungee jump, Gopi's solo KTM adventures, and that final travel mess. It covers so much.
It absolutely does. This deep dive, based on this specific account, really paints a picture. It shows that meticulous preparation is vital, yes, but so is the ability to improvise, to be flexible with money and time. It underlines the unpredictable nature of the Himalayas, the weather, the altitude's effects. It stresses how crucial listening to your body and to medical advice really is. We saw real resilience. And it also shows how people process and conclude such a major experience differently, flying out early, trekking down, adding on adventures.
Yeah, it's definitely not always a straight line from A to B.
Not at all. The journey included all those unexpected detours, and they became part of the core story.
So thinking about this whole narrative we've unpacked, what stands out most to you listening in? Did any of those specific challenges, the flight chaos, the altitude struggle, maybe even the angry cow resonate with things you've experienced when pushing your own boundaries?
Maybe the final thought from digging into this specific story is this. Reaching a huge goal like Everest Base Camp, it proves to be as much about how you navigate the messy, unpredictable stuff thrown your way, be it canceled flights, sudden illness, logistical nightmares, or even dodgy B&Bs and broken suitcase wheels, as it is about putting one foot in front of the other on the trail itself. The whole package is the adventure.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. The whole messy, unpredictable, challenging, rewarding package. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for providing the source material for this deep dive. It was a truly fascinating journey to explore